I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. It happens all the time. Products on shelves are marketed as if they are so good for us, but as soon as we take a closer look at the nutritional information, we see that the content simply doesn't live up to the claims. So I love it when a product is truly solid nutritionally, and even better when that brand is driven by a mission that enhances our well-being and directly impacts and changes lives. So this is why I am thrilled to feature Dave's Killer Bread behind the brand on this week's episode of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. I also want to say specifically, this is not a sponsored podcast. This is not something that is prefabricated. This is me as a registered dietitian sharing the behind the scenes, the backstory, and the inside peek at a brand that I really love, I use, and I think that you'll enjoy learning more about it as well. So it's no secret that I love, love, love good bread. I am a huge fan of artisan style breads. I am a very grateful consumer of my sister-in-law's homemade whole grain sourdough bread. We've even done an entire podcast on that. If you are into making your own breads with a whole sourdough starter. Also, if you're doing gluten-free breads and you're looking for ways to incorporate these that are pretty easy to bake at home. But when it comes to sliced bread, Dave's Killer Bread is what we keep in our kitchen at all times. It's also what many of our Eat Fit restaurant partners feature on their menus as well. So yes, the Dave's Killer Bread products are fantastic nutritionally. Their entire line of breads, bagels, English muffins, and buns are all organic and non-GMO. My favorites, by the way, are their 21 whole grains and seeds and their power seed varieties. But here's the thing. Dave's is more than just a really great bread. If you're not aware, Dave's Killer Bread was actually created by Dave Dahl. He's an ex-con who turned his life around, and the brand embraces and supports this and truly uses the success of the brand to provide opportunity like this for others who have a criminal past as well. So today we are joined by Cristina Watson, brand manager of Dave's Killer Bread. She'll share with us a peek behind the curtain of product innovation, how they have taken it from a seedling of a brand sold at farmers markets and pop-ups at music festivals to a national brand that is now available in nearly every major retailer across the United States in just a few short years. We'll also talk about the mission of Dave's Killer Bread, second chance employment, and what we can learn from this, what we can take away from it, and really start to implement in our personal lives and our work lives as well. As brand manager of Dave's Killer Bread, Cristina oversees all product innovation, brand strategy, creative direction, and communications. She is passionate about the company's second chance employment philosophy. She's also a board member of the Dave's Killer Bread Foundation, which was created in 2015 with the purpose of inspiring and educating other businesses to adopt this employment practice as well. So welcome, Cristina. I am so excited for you to join us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited too.
So we'll be talking about Dave's Killer Bread and product innovation, what goes into creating this wholesome, nutritious product that's so widely available across the U.S. We'll also be learning about Dave's Killer Bread Foundation and second chance employment. But first, I'd like to talk a bit about your role with Dave's Killer Bread so that our listeners kind of understand all the aspects that you're involved with and also just kind of how all this came to be.
Sure. So I've been with Dave for about 8.5 years, and I did not study marketing and advertising, but I did have a role at an advertising company in a suburb of Portland prior to my job at Dave's, and really fell in love with the world of marketing and advertising and kind of, what drives people to purchase different brands and products and stay loyal to those brands and products and whatnot.
And you said that you had a friend who worked at Dave's and was telling you kind of about the philosophy of Dave's that we'll be talking more about too. And you were like, okay, this sounds like an amazing place. Where can I start there?
Yeah, my childhood friend actually who still works at Dave's, was working in a different role than she is currently in now. But she was telling me about this company she worked for, and this was like, I don't know, nine and a half years ago, and how cool it was. And they Dave had this really cool backstory. He'd been in and out of prison, and it was a family business that he had come into, and they hired people from all walks of life, including those who had criminal backgrounds. And I was very intrigued by it. She said she loved her job. It was a great environment. And I was coming from a job that I was kind of falling out of love with. And so I was already in the headspace that I was looking. And so when she said that something was open, I was like, hey, I will totally apply for that and see what happens. I've always been kind of curious by nature. So even if I didn't necessarily have a background in something or study it, I like to learn. I've always continued to want to learn and challenge myself. So I think that's kind of where my career went from just being the thing that I knew and turned into more things that I have known and kind of added to my experience. I think oftentimes, especially, when we're kind of going through like college and our early career years, we see people that have big roles and we kind of don't necessarily understand how they got there. Not to say that I have a big role necessarily, but
it is. And I feel the exact same way. It's like, we see,
thank you.
Yeah. I remember being in college and hearing about people's jobs and careers and thinking, wow, how does that even happen? And a lot of people don't go through that backstory. So I'm like you, whenever I'm speaking, especially to a group of students or anyone that's kind of, up and coming dietitians or something, I want to kind of do that backstory. So I'm grateful for you sharing that to us. And I think doing the hands-on events and festivals and really grassroots guerrilla marketing on this for a brand that I think a lot of us see it on shelves. And the assumption is, well, this is easy. It's a huge company. We expect that we see it in pretty much every store. But to know that not too long ago, you're out there with your, money box selling loaves of bread and sampling them out to breadheads.
So when I came over to working at Dave's, my first job there was to run our consumer events. When I first started, we had just launched Dave's in Safeway in Northern California. So at this point, we were only in I want to say maybe 6 or 7 states, mostly just the Pacific Northwest. And the way that we marketed, quote unquote, our marketing plan, the product was to get the bread in people's mouths. We really strongly believed that if people tried the product and tasted the product, they would know, A, why it's worth spending a little bit more money on, and B, they would just be hooked. I mean, it's amazing bread. And for a category that's kind of been, pardon the pun, stale for so long, to have a bread that had amazing taste, amazing texture, amazing nutrition, all organic, non-GMO, no animal products, all that stuff just seemed kind of like an anomaly in a way. So we took the bread to farmers markets, food and wine shows, marathons, bike races, all that kind of stuff, basically along the West Coast. And that was how we really built the brand, getting people to try this product, build a loyal following. And that philosophy to some degree still holds today. We believe that if you try the product, you'll know why it's so great and you'll want to keep coming back for more. So we have a very loyal following of what we call breadheads. And that's kind of how that started. So my first job was to run those consumer events. I did a lot of traveling, spent a lot of time in bread trucks, rolling bread racks and setting up little 10 by 10 canopy tents with my team. And we would just talk about the product, sell the product, and sample the product. And that was my first job. And then I grew from that role into another one that included some data analysis and then a little bit of marketing. And eventually a few years ago, was promoted to brand manager. So my role currently is basically to manage the entire DKB brand. And that's inclusive of all the consumer touch points from, PR, social media, our advertising and marketing strategy. I have 2 people that work on my team with me. Innovation, our website, anything you see in store, product names, copy, pretty much anything that a consumer would see is part of my role to make sure that that's all cohesive and communicating what we want to be communicating to our fans.
It's not only what a consumer sees, it's also what they taste and experience too, with the product innovation part of it.
Quality too, making sure that, the products, not just the new products we make, but every single product that we continue to make, every loaf of 21 whole grains, every loaf of good feed. Want to make sure that those are delivering the Dave's Killer Bread promise. People have come to expect from us that everything is going to be excellent quality, not just because that's what we have told them, but also if we are going to be charging, $5 or $6 for an item in a category that's like $3 an item, we have to make sure we're delivering that premium quality to them, not just in the organic ingredients, but also in that taste and texture. Because so many times in the health food or healthy industries, what you have to sacrifice in order to be healthy is so often the taste. You have to give up something that tastes good so that it's healthy, or vice versa. If something tastes really good, then there's no way it's healthy. So to make sure that we're delivering both of those things, the nutrition, the organic ingredients, but also making sure that it tastes really, really good without having to even put anything on it, is something that's really, really near and dear to our heart.
So talk to us about the backstory too of how Dave's came to be, because as you say, Dave's is more than just a really great bread. There's a really strong backstory and how the brand as we know it and we see on shelves, how this happened.
Sure. So I was not there when Dave's very, very first started. It started in 2005, so almost exactly 15 years ago. But prior to that, in the 50s, Dave and Glenn's father, Jim, his name is Jim Dahl, he and his wife had a bakery that had an edge for the time. It wasn't as extreme as Dave's Killer Bread is, with all the organic and non-GMO and seeded whole grain whatnot, but it was more like sprouted breads and healthier things than just what you might be able to find in regular store shelves. So Dave grew up in a family of bakers, and Glenn, his older brother, ran the family business, which at the time, it went through a couple different names, but at the time when Dave started, it was called Nature Bake. And when Dave was struggling in and out of prison, struggling with addiction, in 2004, in the middle of his last sentence, he was released on good behavior, and his older brother, Glenn, recognized that Dave had sort of had this moment of reckoning in prison where he saw clearly that he wanted to change his life. He wanted to contribute something positively. And that was an internal change in Dave. He decided that he wanted to do something more than what he had done up to this point. And so Glenn welcomed him back which at the time was the family business, Nature Bake. And he tasked him with coming up with a line of breads that would be appealing to like a younger crowd and would be all organic and non-GMO and pack all these whole grains and seeds in them. And Dave basically worked tirelessly in the bakery for, like I said, I was there at this time, but the lore is that he would work like 16 hours a day. He would just throw himself into the work because he was so passionate about this. After living decades of a certain type of life and then realizing you want to do something more, but kind of being told that people don't necessarily believe you can do it, there's definitely like a chip on your shoulder to some degree. And when someone has a personality, totally trying to prove himself, and, he obviously struggles with drug addiction. He has a disease of addiction. And so sometimes that negative thing that someone has also is a positive. So in the negative way, obviously he was addicted to bad things, but in the good way, that addictive personality helped kind of propel him and throw him into this amazing process and this project of making Dave's Killer Bread. So he worked tirelessly to come up with this line of breads. He took 6 different recipes down to the Portland Farmers Market in August of 2005, which is like a local little market here that has had national acclaim, actually. It's been written up, I believe, in like the New York Times at one point for being such a great farmers market. So it's definitely well known. People travel to it and whatnot. And they were having a summer festival about bread. And so Dave went down there with his little tent and his nephew, and they sold the bread. And it was an instant success. People just loved it. Every single Saturday that they were there, they would sell out. And slowly but surely, grinding like that, and kind of the notoriety of having this interesting and compelling backstory, being in and out of prison for a total of 15 years and then turning your life around, made him a bit of a local celebrity. So some news stories would pick it up, and eventually some co-ops picked it up, and then some grocery stores picked it up. And then, lo and behold, we're sold in all of North America now. So it's a wild ride to consider that was only 15 years ago next month.
And the family then, as he had the success, even just on that smaller scale with the farmer's market, was that when they said, okay, we're losing the name Nature Baker and we're adopting Dave's Killer Bread?
Yeah. So in think here. I think it might have been 2012 or 13. It was shortly after I started there. Essentially, we needed to be able to make more Dave's Killer Bread. The demand for DKB versus Nature Bake was just getting a little bit out of whack. And so we had to be able to make more Dave's Killer Bread at our bakery here. And we determined that it was the right thing to do to absorb, the Nature Bake brand into Dave's Killer Bread.
And you've said too, when you and I've talked before, that he kind of had this like obsession with creating what he saw as the perfect bread. And so like a lot of times you might have a whole grain bread, but it really only has the seeds and stuff sprinkled on the top. So he wanted that seed, that texture, the grains packed all the way through so that it was like just this really dense, you slice it and every slice is beautiful and packed with nutrition and texture, and really was, like you said, that addictive personality went from a negative and he totally poured it into this positive of creating this like really innovative product, and especially innovative on most grocery store shelves. There hasn't been something like it.
Oh yeah. There hasn't been something like it, and not just the taste and texture and all the ingredients and whatnot, but also if you look at the label, there's this guy and he's holding a guitar and he has like big muscles and it's called Dave's Killer Bread. And up to that point, most of what you saw in the bread aisle was like light brown and it had like wheat fields. And it was like, like the feeling that you got when you went down the bread aisle was like very blah, kind of quote unquote sea of sameness.
Everything's beige, you're right.
Kind of pick out something. Everything's beige. Everything was beige. It was the color wheat. And then, we come in there with these brightly colored labels and this package that said, the back of the package, it no longer says this exact thing, but the back of the package used to say, I was a 4-time loser till I found out I was in the wrong game, because he had been sentenced to prison 4 different times. And then he realized, hey, this isn't the right game for me. So the story of Dave himself was on the packaging. And for a sort of like, sensitive earth mama type category where there's not like this extreme, there's not extreme colors, there's not extreme stories, like there's not extreme names, none of that stuff. It really shook up the bread aisle. It was one of those things that, when people were going down the bread aisle, they'd see it and they'd turn and be like, what's this?
Yeah, it definitely
and that
catches
wasn't
your eye for sure.
necessarily Dave. It totally catches your eye. And that wasn't something that they sat down and were like, we need to like make people think twice. Dave was just doing something that felt authentic to him. This was something that was his story. It was the product that he poured his heart into, along with his nephew and older brother, obviously. And out of it came this really, really amazing thing. And I think that part of the reason that we have been able to be lucky with the success we've had is because it was so authentic from the beginning. That he was doing something and they were doing something that was a labor of love, and the product that came out of it was fantastic. And the message that came out of it was authentic and true, and it was life-changing for many people. And so that just really permeates not just the product itself, but everything from that point forward. And
we should also say that Dave did not kill people. It's just the name of the bread.
This is true. Yes, it's just killer good. It's kind of like a slang,
Yeah.
It's so good, it's killer. That's what it's about. He did not kill anybody.
And so farmers market, grassroots, kind of started to get more and more notoriety. It started to spread into more stores locally, but now it's available across the United States in stores from Walmart to Target to Whole Foods to Costco. There's very few stores you could walk into and you're not going to see Dave's Killer Bread. So how did the brand go from that small grassroots to this nationwide expansion? How did that happen? If you can kind of walk us through that.
Sure. It was definitely a process. We were growing at the rate that we kind of could, the resources that we had, for as long as we could. We kind of stretched our distribution network through our own employees and some third-party distributors, and we sort of duct taped together this patchwork model of getting bread out to all 50 states as well as we could ourselves through what the Dahl family, and then at the time our private equity investor group was able to kind of cobble together. And then in 2015, we were acquired by Flowers Foods, which is the second largest bakery company in America. And their network of distribution and manufacturing and resources is so far beyond what we had access to before. And basically overnight, in the spring of 2016, we tripled our distribution. So we went from you can't quote me on this exact number, but I want to say we went from something like 7,500 or 8,000 stores. So we were into 20,000 literally overnight. It was 1 week in April. We brought Dave's Killer Bread, 6 different varieties of Dave's Killer Bread, to thousands of stores that didn't have it before. Up to that point, we would say that we were technically in all 50 states, but for some states, it would be we were in, one Sam's Club or something. So we had a flag planted in that state, but it wasn't the large population of that state could actually get Dave's Killer Bread. And now, to your point, we're in basically every major retailer except for Trader Joe's and Wegmans. But other than that, we're in Walmart, Target, Kroger, Albertsons, Safeway, Whole Foods, and Publix, All Holds, basically all the major store chains. And then obviously online through Amazon, Instacart, all that stuff. So it's pretty crazy. And then we're also sold in Costco in Mexico, and then we're sold in some store chains in Canada as well. So, when I first started, we had just gotten into Safeway Northern California, and we thought that was
huge.
The gold mine.
Right.
This is so cool. Yeah. Who would have thought that here we would be 22,000 stores later?
Right. And I love the way that you say that it was basically a duct taped together distribution model. And you had it was kind of whatever you needed to do to make it work. You had some were your own trucks with your own drivers, some were outsourced to other distribution, agents. And you said even some stores, sold it fresh. They received it, they put it on the shelf. Others, like a Costco or something, might have needed to freeze it and then thaw to sell. So it was kind of all over the place, but y'all were at the point where in that growth, you have to just make it work, figure it out in order to continue that. I think that's also where a lot of people have, whether it's a little idea or something that someone listening to this has started, and it could not even be related to food. It could just be whatever your thing is that you've created and people appreciate it and love it. And you think, how do I go from doing this out of my kitchen or out of my spare room or craft room or whatever to putting it on a bigger scale? And I think this is just a really great example of that. It's just that perseverance, looking for opportunity and saying yes to the things that you probably scared y'all a lot to take big steps into some of these larger, distributors like a Costco or a Sam's. It's okay, wait, do we have capacity? Because at that point you only had a limited number of bakeries who were baking the bread. So with Flowers, it gave y'all access to more bakeries to make more product and the distribution network to take it to the stores.
Oh yeah. That's definitely been, that's been so pivotal for the brand's success, what we've been able to do after the acquisition, because like I said, the resources, the experience too, Flowers has been around since 1919. So there's a lot that they've been able to really help us out with. And at the same time, I think it's been a lot of the times when a smaller brand like DKB is acquired by a bigger brand, the little brand kind of gets eaten up and isn't as, everything changes. It's not as authentic. It's not as real. But they've been so supportive of everything about Dave's Killer Bread, everything from our quality to the ingredients. There's no corners that are cut. They just want to make more bread and sell more bread and help the brand grow in the best way possible.
So let's talk a little bit about product innovation and kind of what that looks like. I know 2 of my favorite Dave's products are the 21 whole grains and seeds and also Power Seed. And I love that there's the regular slice, but then there's also the thin slice for people who are wanting to cut back a little bit on the carbs. But bread is just the beginning. You guys now have bagels, you have English muffins. You also have a new line of buns that have come out. So what does all this look like? How do you determine what new products you're going to come out with, or what do the ingredients look like? What are the names going to be?
So innovation is a really, really fun process. It's kind of wild and it's sometimes a little bit free form. It's not necessarily the most structured thing, but the way that we sort of go about it is we try to marry up 3 different things. One of them is consumer need. So what do our fans want from us? We don't want to make something that our fans don't really care about. The other thing is what currently exists on the market. If there's already something out there that we would basically make the identical version of, why would we do that? We need to make something that is different we want to do in whatever category we're launching into what we did with Dave's Killer Bread back in 2005. That's what we want to do. Shake it up, bring something different, whether that be something where, great example. So a few years ago, one of the things we did not have in our line was a white bread. A lot of people still like white bread, even though it's not considered to be healthy. It's, like empty carbs, it's refined flours, it's a lot of times used with bleached flours and whatnot. So it's very devoid of nutrition. But the reality is it's a huge portion of the bread category. And a lot of our fans still really like white bread, or maybe it's kids, maybe kids don't like brown bread, whatever it is. So we were like, hey, how can we do this and do this differently? So we came out with a bread called white bread done right. And it is basically like the DKB version of a white bread. So first off, I will go on the record saying it is not a straight up white bread. If you put it next to like a white bread, it's kind of beigeish. But as far as like the taste and texture goes, it's not packed with all the seeds. It doesn't have seeds on the top. It has like a beautiful flour dusting. So for somebody who doesn't want a seeded wheat bread, they have an option that is still organic. It's still non-GMO. It has 10 grams of full grains per slice, which is more than any other white bread on the market. So we delivered something more than what currently existed in that space. And that philosophy is always what we go into when we're trying to come up with a new product. It's what can we do so that people can still enjoy this category that has been sort of, demonized. Bread is sort of like, ooh, it's carbs, empty carbs, it's really bad for you, that kind of thing. But what can we do so that people can still have the bread products they love while counting on the nutrition that Dave's will deliver and the taste and texture that they expect from us and that quality that they expect from us. So trying to kind of like look at all those things together is how we come up with what we're going to launch next.
So number one, what consumers want. Number two, what's not currently on the market. And then number three, where can you guys come in and do it better? And that kind of determines what these next areas are going to step into. Yeah.
Yep.
What about the names? How do y'all name it?
Yeah. Our team just spitballs ideas and we come up with names. The original names of Dave's Killer Bread items, 20 whole grains and seeds, good seed, power seed, they're definitely different than just the regular names out there. Sometimes, we do have some, we have some normal ones like 100% whole wheat. And we named it 100% whole wheat because we want people to know that it's a 100% whole wheat bread. But then we have other ones that we wanted to have, cooler names. Like for instance, white bread done right. We called it white bread done right because it is white bread that's done better. Like it is more nutritious than other white breads. So that's why we named it that way. We have our breakfast line, so our bagels and our English muffins and our breakfast bread, they have super fun names. Our everything bagel, instead of calling it just an everything bagel, it's epic everything. And it's epic because it's 26 grams of full grains per bagel. And it has this amazing, it's our best-selling bagel. It's my personal favorite. Our berry bagel, which, much of our competition makes like a blueberry bagel. We decided to make boom and berry bagel. There's four different berries in it. So instead of just doing blueberries, we did 4 different types of berries. And that's kind of like how we approached those things as well. Even though those flavors already existed, the same way that wheat multigrain breads already existed before DKB, we were like, what can we do that makes it a little bit different, taste a little bit better, and then also have a little bit more nutrition.
And what's new on the horizon? What's coming up? If it's anything that you can share.
I can't give specific details because I don't actually know specific details yet. We're exploring a lot of different things. We have a newsletter called Toaster Talk that we have fans that have signed up for. And earlier this year, we sent out a survey asking for people to give us their ideas of what they'd want us to launch. And I want to say we got like 8,000 different responses. And some of them were so funny. People would say like Dave's Killer Bread dog food, Dave's Killer Bread ice cream, Dave's Killer Bread water, which I'm like, what? Like, how do you make that connection? But what it told us is our fans they want anything that we can make. We're very, very blessed that people love our product. They love our brand and they trust us. Yes. And that is something that is invaluable. That's something that we don't take for granted. We cannot damage that. We want to make sure that when we launch products, we're delivering on that promise to them so that we maintain the trust. But what that's done is it's given us a lot of permission to explore launching new items. So we're constantly in that process of exploring and researching and testing and deciding what we want to do, but we don't have actual plans lined out just yet. But hopefully we'll have some new products next year. That's the goal always.
Well, my vote is a cereal, because I feel like a really good tasting, fiber rich and also protein rich cereal that's low in sugar is really sorely lacking in the market. There's really that also tastes really good. So that would be like my submission there.
I'll put that in the hopper.
Yes. As soon as someone says they want water, that tells me they absolutely have trust. And they're like, whatever Dave's Killer Bread puts out, I'm going to buy it.
Yeah, it's definitely something we don't take for granted. The relationship with our fans is something that drives us to be better. It's something that we are very appreciative of. And it's not just the quality and the taste and texture that they love, but they also love the fact that we're a brand with a mission. We do more than just make products. And they love that we have this background and this mission of second chance employment, where we hire people that have criminal backgrounds that might have the door of employment closed to them other places. We believe that door should be opened. This is something that, Glenn always believed, Dave's older brother, always believed that you should hire the best person for the job, and that their history and their background shouldn't be what either hinders them from that job or is the sole determining factor for them getting that job. And so his openness, and then Dave's very well-known story up here in Portland, in like the Portland metro area, made it that, we are a second chance employer. We are very, very well known locally for being a second chance employer. A lot of times we hear anecdotes of people who were even in prison and found out, when they find out they're going to be getting out or they have a release date, it can be very stressful to be like, what's it going to be like to return to this world after I'm released? Because what kind of opportunities are going to be open for me? What doors are going to be opened versus things that will be closed? Those who have a criminal background are likely to have their job callbacks reduced by at least 50% just because they have to check that box on an application, regardless of whether or not they have the experience or the intelligence or the skills to do the job. We have one partner actually out here at our bakery that I was working with for an interview at one point, and he said that the job that he had in prison was working on solar panels. It was considered a really great job. It paid well by prison standards, which is like, 15 cents an hour or something crazy like that. But that's what he did in prison. That was his job. So when he got out of prison, he had the experience to do a job of that same nature. He interviewed at a company. They were so amazed by what he knew. And, he was they were going through the plant and he was able to point things out, and they offered him the job. And then because his background check came back where he had a criminal history, they denied him the job. And I find stories like that so troubling because he had the ability to do the job and they saw that and they offered it to him. And then here's this roadblock that he was up against when he had already served his time that, the justice system said he should, and yet he's still being penalized for it. That doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem fair. He's ready to make a change. He wants to contribute, and he found this job that was the exact thing he did in prison, and then he can't do it. So he ended up coming to Dave, which is a win for us, obviously, because he's awesome. But, we hear stories like that all the time. And something that's very important to our brand is the fact that we do believe you should hire the best person for the job, and a criminal background should not be this barrier that people have to constantly try to get over when they're trying to make their life better.
So for someone who isn't familiar, explain to us kind of what that process looks like. When someone's applying for a job, it'll ask, is it convicted of a felony?
Well, that depends on what the state regulations are. In Oregon, for instance, we are a ban the box state, which means you cannot have on a job application if somebody has to check a box if they have had a felony conviction or not. You have to have a conditional job offer to somebody before you can run their background check. So that varies state by state. But for us up here in Oregon, that's just how it is. At Dave's Killer Bread, our belief is that if someone applies for the job and they have the skills and experience and they're ready and willing and they want to do this job, having a criminal background should not be the reason that that in itself should not be the reason that they're denied employment. So what we have is a very good, robust HR team, and it's a matter of having thoughtful conversations with the applicant for them to basically explain the situation, explain what showed up on their background check. And it's funny because that isn't some crazy process. That's how any hiring process should be. You should be able to have an open, thoughtful conversation with the hiring manager, regardless of what your history is, so that the hiring manager is picking the right person for the job. Once you're hired, you're just an employee, or we call them partners. All of our employees are called partners. You're just a partner. You're not treated any differently. You're not given like a special job in the back. You're just you're hired and you're part of the team. And then whether or not you decide to disclose your background with other partners on the floor is entirely up to you. You don't like wear a different uniform. You're not treated any differently. The environment at our bakery is extremely open and welcoming. We call it the attitude of gratitude, because many times people who have been denied opportunities time after time are sometimes the most grateful for an opportunity that they are given. So you can kind of sense that when you're in our bakery. People are extremely passionate. They love their jobs. They work well as a team. And it's also very supportive because many people there know what other people there have been through. So it's definitely, although I obviously love the bread. I bought the bread before I even worked there. But the second chance employment piece is my favorite part about being at Dave's Killer Bread for sure. Even though I'm around people all the time that have these amazing histories and these amazing stories, and the challenges that they've been through are more than I could even imagine. They've gone through multiple. Every single time I hear one, it always kind of rattles me, because it's like these people, they come to work, they're so grateful for the opportunity. You know, they're this sort of beacon of hope for so many people that feel like they can't do more than what society has seen them as. And like, here I am complaining that I have to do like a budget document or something. You know, my problems seem to pale in comparison to what they've been through, and yet they're so positive and welcoming and just wonderful people to be around. And on our website, if you go to daveskillerbread.com/second chances, we have 12 different bios of people who have decided to share their stories. You know, this isn't something that we force people to do by any means. So while 30 to 40% of our partners here do have a felony conviction or a criminal background, we don't necessarily know who they are unless they decide to disclose that. So
I can link to the page with the bios on there too, so that our listeners can see those.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Because some of the bios there are so moving. You know, people have been through homelessness. They've been through addiction. They've been through abuse. One of our partners who has since moved on to a different role was in prison for 20 years before he was released, and he found out about Dave's while he was actually in a halfway house, and then came and applied and was hired, and he ended up actually running our bakery for a period of time. He was like the most senior person running the production floor. And stories like that, you know, it's like I said, it's just one of those things that makes you realize that people have a deep capacity and potential for greatness if they're given the opportunity. And for someone to come knocking on your door and say, "Hey, I'd like this opportunity," and then you shut it on them, that doesn't seem like that's being very positive or helpful to contributing in a good way in the future. You know, these people, so many times when people are released from prison, if they don't have the opportunity to find gainful employment, so many times the way that their life goes is right back into the system, because maybe it's the fact that they need to pay their court fines and fees, and those are piling up while they're in prison, and then they're released and they're supposed to pay them. How are they supposed to pay them if they don't have employment?
Our work and the jobs that we do are so tied to our esteem and how we feel about ourselves and what we're contributing to society. And not having that can really leave us feeling like empty in that way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And having the support and camaraderie of people who have been through what you've been through, but also a reason to get up and go do something in the morning that's actually productive and around people that will hold you accountable. Because that's the other thing. While Dave's Killer Bread does have a lot of experience in this, and so we are comfortable having tough conversations, at the same time, you are held accountable to do your work the same as anybody else. In fact, one of the stories that I'll tell you is one of our partners. Her name is Melissa, and she actually started with Dave she had a rough past, rough growing up. She actually messed up and was let go for a brief period of time. And they basically said to her, if you kind of get your act cleaned up, you still have a job here, because they saw the potential in her. So many times it's easy to shut someone out or shut someone down and just kind of like close the book on them. But they saw the potential. They saw that, she was a good person and she maybe just needed some more direction. So they said, if you clean up your act and whatnot and get back on the right path, you have a job here. And she did. And she's been with us ever since. She's one of the most inspiring and positive people. She is so open and willing to tell her story and inspire others. And that's just an example of, people deserve to be seen as individuals and for what they can bring and the potential and the positive and the greatness that they have inside them, not be just viewed with the worst mistake they've ever made in their life. And if a person wants to be better, and I want to make a clear distinction there, we're not saying that every single person that has been to prison and committed crimes deserves the same opportunity as everybody else. What we're saying is, somebody who wants to do better, someone who has had that moment of reckoning that Dave had when he was in prison, where he's like, I want to do better. I want to make a positive impact. I want to contribute positively. I want to connect with my friends and family. I want to make an honest wage. I want to do these things. When someone has made that choice and made that change in their heart, we believe that opportunity and that door should be opened. So it's not just saying, yeah, sure, do terrible things and don't have to pay the consequences. We're saying that if you've done terrible things and you've paid the consequences and you are ready to make a change and you want to have a job and you want to do all these things, that is a door that should be opened to you, even though you have had this challenge in your past.
And you guys actively work to educate other organizations, other businesses on the importance of this and finding ways that they can get involved in second chance employment. So tell us about that. How does that, like, if someone is listening and they are, in a leadership position in an organization, how would they start to have a little bit more of this layered into their work environment?
Sure. So in 2015, so almost exactly 5 years ago, we launched the DKB Foundation. And the genesis of that was that this is something that we really believe in. We practice it, but we only have a certain amount of employees that we actually can hire, obviously. So how can we make a bigger impact? How can we impact the world beyond the four walls of, the Dave's Killer Bread bakeries? Like, how can we do this in a way that is more impactful? So we launched the DKB Foundation with the intention that we would be, or the DKB Foundation would be the business-to-business arm of what the brand and company already practice. So, motivating, teaching, inspiring, educating, equipping other businesses to adopt second chance employment in thoughtful, practical ways, regardless of industry, regardless of size, all of those things. This is something that we really believe strongly in and want to impact in a bigger way beyond just our employees.
And it's dkbfoundation.org is the website. And DKB, of course, being Dave's Killer Bread. So dkbfoundation.org.
Yes.
And I'll link to that in the episode notes as well, so people will have that. But something that, it's, as you said, it's a really great bread, but what really gets your heart, my heart, and, kind of is a very powerful message is this mission that also goes through in all aspects of Dave's Killer Bread with second chance employment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I know it sounds super corny. This is like the marketer in me, but it's super corny, is that we're more than Killer Bread. I think that the two go hand in hand. I don't think that if we just had a mission, but like very subpar product, that we would still see the same success we're having. And likewise, if we had this amazing product, but there was no heart behind it, I think that there would be an emptiness to the brand that people might not necessarily feel as much that they do towards the brand that they do now. I think there's a relationship people have, at least, and I hope, and in my perspective, it seems like there's a relationship people have with Dave's Killer Bread. And I think part of it comes from that sort of, we're more than just Killer Bread. We're more than just this product, that we do more than just make product. We don't just make something that people consume. We actually make a difference in our communities.
I love every bit of that. And that's exactly why I reached out to you guys to do this podcast, because I was like, it's an incredible product with an incredible mission. And I think a lot of people aren't all aware of the mission, or if they are, they don't know just how deeply this goes or what the resources are that are there for us, and that, we can use this as inspiration in our own worlds and our own lives and the things that we have this control or touch point on when it comes to hiring processes and things like that. Is there anything that you and I haven't talked about that you want to cover?
I would just encourage people, check it out. The bread's amazing, obviously. Tastes really good, even though it's just bread. It's still wild to me that, people feel as passionately that they do about a bread product. We get these fan letters from people, and I'm like, it's bread. We're not making iPhones or some sort of amazing technology. We didn't come up with an app. We didn't come up with Uber. It's bread,
bread.
But people love it. They can't get it. It's sliced bread. It's so funny. I'm like, this is it seems like such a boring thing, but at the same time, I guess we really shook it up enough that people are loving it. So, and that will never be lost on me. I never take that excitement for granted, especially because when I first started, we were a lot smaller. I remember we had 30,000 Facebook fans or something. I remember being like, oh my gosh, you guys being, by the way, the two other people that I worked with, it wasn't a massive team of people. I was like, oh my gosh, do you guys think we're going to get to 50,000 fans? And here we are, 8 years later, we have 1.1 million fans or something like that. That would have never even crossed my mind back then. So it's not lost on me that we're very lucky to have the very loyal following that we do. And we're so appreciative of that. We love our breadheads. They're like our fans, like a musician has fans and they love them at their concerts. That's how we feel about our breadheads. We adore them.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
A tremendous thank you to Cristina for carving out time to share her insight, her experience, and also the philosophy and the mission of Dave's Killer Bread. As mentioned, I'll include the links that we talked about in the show notes of this episode. And I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. If you would like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com, and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.